everyone in the family and the ownership has to recognize that when they are in that business circle, they are in the business, they are employees, not owners, not family. Feelings are going to get hurt when we're holding people accountable, especially family members, especially close family members. People's relationships may get strained because of the dynamics of the family business. We want to build an open and honest organization that thrives on that honest and open communication. Strengthen the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle in your family business. This is Fearless Family Business. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fearless Family Business Show. My name is Adam Hill, and I am your host. And today I want to talk about an important issue that's always a significant challenge in family businesses, and that is getting the right people in the right seats. I mean, who's with me on this? When you're working with family, it's, well, put that aside for a moment. When you're working in any business, getting the right people on board and making sure that you have the systems in place to make sure that they are the right people and that they're in the right seats and that they're performing at their highest level, that's a challenge no matter where you go. Within family business, there is an additional challenge of having to manage that family dynamic within the employment structure of the business. And sometimes that can create significant conflict, as it certainly has in family businesses for generations, from family farms to industry to mom and pop shops all around the country. You know, when you're hiring family members, that dynamic makes it a lot difficult. But fortunately, there are ways, there are tools, and there's structures that you could put into place that can smooth out the road of employing family members, of making sure that your family is the right people and that the right people are in the right seats, and having the difficult conversations when you need to so that everybody knows what to expect and the clear boundaries are set. So right people, right seats. Now, first of all, you have to have both. But what are right people and right seats? Well, right people, right seats was a term that was popularized by Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great. And if you haven't read that book, Good to Great, you should go read it because it is a great foundational, fundamental business book that really gets to the key concepts of what many systems like EOS are all about. And then that right people, right seat concept was adopted by EOS as a foundational tool for how to get the right people on the team and into the company. And within Jim Collins' books, he talks about getting the right people on the bus, the type of people that really connect with your culture, that are really great at what they do and are really fantastic. Now, I want to do a thought exercise with you really quick before we jump into the content of this episode. And I want you to think back on a time, if you've been in career mode for a long time, or maybe you've worked in your family's business, maybe you've worked outside the family business in some other job. Chances are many of us have jobs that we didn't like or that just didn't fit us well. Am I right? Can you think about any of those jobs that you've had in the past where you felt like maybe you aren't the right person, where you weren't the right person, or maybe you were maybe the right person for the organization, you fit the culture, but you were just in the wrong seat? I know that there was a scenario where both of those were the case for me, and it was not pleasant. So right out of college, I went to work for an escrow company. Now, if you've ever heard of escrow companies, if you ever bought a house, you know what an escrow company is, at least from a conceptual way. They're the people that print out the giant packs of paper that you have to sign your life away on when you're buying a home or you're setting up a mortgage or doing those kinds of things. So what drew me to that was really I was just a temp through a temp agency, and I got placed at a company that did escrow, and I got seated in a seat that was essentially just taking that paperwork, making sure that it was all completely ordered, making sure that I printed it out correctly, making sure that I had all of the signature pages attached correctly, and that they got sent out to the client in the right way, on time, and all of that. So No pressure, right? No kidding. Just you had to be completely organized. I had to be right on time and all of that kind of stuff. And just out of college, I didn't really know what my skill set was within the career world. So this was my first experience with that. And I remember that I was working for a woman who was very, very detail oriented. If I got anything wrong, she had to stand over my shoulder and correct it for me and shuffle the papers and make sure that they were correct, to the point where I still have nightmares today about shuffling paperwork in front of me. It was just, I mean, long story short, it was just clearly not the right fit for me. I was the wrong person for that job, and I was in the wrong seat for me. And before too long, they discovered that as well. And I was one of the first people terminated during a layoff time within that company. And while it was very painful at the time to be laid off, it always is, and that's never a pleasant thing. I did learn later that that was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. I was not happy in that seat. I was not happy doing that job. I realized that I am not the most organized of individuals to be able to shuffle and stack paperwork in the right way and send it out on time. It was very high stress and very, very difficult for me. But that was a great discovery for me in the fact that I wasn't the right person in the right seat, because I could take that knowledge and apply it to new things that I was trying to discover within myself of where I might be the right person in the right seat elsewhere. And now I want to kind of flip that and walk you through that. Now, if you're an employer, family business employer, taking that look at what right people, right seats are for your organization is a first and very important step to making sure that everybody in your company is aligned around your vision and going in the same direction and really, really executing well on that vision in a day-to-day basis. Right people, right seats is one of the most important foundational tools that you have. So how within a family business can you get that dynamic when you have certain, when you have personalities and family members and all of this kind of stuff? How do you manage when somebody is maybe a wrong person? Well, let's start by kind of really defining the two types of people issues that you have in a family business. I mean, certainly you can have the right person in the right seat, and that's always a win, because if you have the right person in the right seat, you have a winner, and you've got somebody who's not only loving their job, but they're performing well at it. And then the second one is when you have the wrong person in the wrong seat, of course, and that is an obvious no, not a good fit. That's what I was when I was in the escrow company. And it was the best idea for me to kind of leave that situation because I just wasn't a good fit. I wasn't great at the job. I didn't have it in my genetic encoding to do escrow work. And I wasn't the right person for it because I didn't really fit the culture necessarily for that company. But there's two other types of people issues that are a little more tricky, a little more challenging, because they can be a little bit deceptive. And the first is when you have the right person in the wrong seat. And when you have the right person in the wrong seat, you have somebody that is a great individual. They fit your core values. They love your company. They're great for your culture, but they're not performing. They're not performing up to standard in order to do well at their job or have that genetic encoding. And so it would be really difficult, or if not impossible, to train them up to get there. There's just something about them that they just can't get the job. And that's okay, because a lot of times in that situation, if you have the right person, maybe there's a right seat for them somewhere in the organization that you would be able to have for them. But there's also the difficult discussion that you might have to have with them if you can't find the right seat for them, because ultimately, if depending on how your culture works, you'll want to make sure that they're meeting their performance metrics, not just for you, but for them. And here's the other thing about that is if they're not really performing in that job, it doesn't matter how much you love them, how great they fit your culture. If they're in the wrong seat, they're eventually going to be miserable. They're eventually not going to be happy because they're going to be frustrated that they're not performing at the level that they need to perform at. So that is a discussion that needs to be had. That's something that needs to be corrected. Then the second kind of more complex people issue that you might run into is where you have the wrong person in the right seat. And you may be wondering, well, how can you have the wrong person in the right seat? Well, this is somebody that is, that really is great at their job. They're doing everything right. It's the opposite of the right person, wrong seat argument, because you have somebody that is executing day in and day out and hitting their numbers and doing so well at their job, but they really, really aren't a great fit for your culture. In fact, people don't like to be around them. They just don't. They bring a bit of toxicity to the atmosphere, to the culture, to the environment. Even though they're hitting their numbers, it's still a challenge to keep them on board. And this is another one where you want to make the change here, because ultimately you want people that fit your culture, that are living your core values, that are rowing in the same direction as you are as a visionary. Because if you're not, then they're going to eat away at your culture, and really, really deteriorate the quality of your culture over time. So this is the concept that you want to basically take away and get from that is in that kind of four quadrants of right people, right seats. You want to have the ultimate goal is to have all of your people as right people in the right seats, because then you remove a lot of those obstacles of people not fitting your culture. You remove a lot of the obstacles of people not performing at their jobs. You have everybody on board. Now, again, the challenge therein when you're in a family business is a lot of times you have the family dynamic. And how do you have those wrong person, wrong seat conversations with a cousin or a brother or father, a mother, a son, daughter? How do you have those conversations, and how do you have those expectations? Well, that kind of starts with what I think the first fundamental part of getting right people, right seats really would be. And that comes from how you structure the ownership, how you communicate right off the bat before anybody even comes on board, the rules of engagement for employment. And a lot of times that comes from the structure of a family charter. Now, I've talked about family charters a little bit in the past. I've even had a couple of guests, including my guest a few weeks ago, Gino, who discussed the benefits of having a family charter that sets up the rules of engagement. And really, it allows and it sets the boundaries that clarifies to all family members what is expected of them, so that it's crystal clear. And if you have to go back to them and point to that document that everybody agreed upon, everybody signed off on, well, then it should make it no surprise when somebody doesn't meet those objectives, or is the wrong person, or is in the wrong seat. And so the way that the way to look at a family charter is to really look at it from a variety of standpoints, from setting up how ownership is distributed, to succession planning, to transition planning. And another important part about that, about getting right people, right seats, is the part that is the family employment policy. And this is a policy really that guides how specifically in the business family members can be brought in, how they're trained, how they're brought into the company, how they're hired, what their accountability is, and there's all sorts of resources that can help you draft that employment policy. But if you can assign that in a similar fashion that outlines your internal employment policy, well, then you can get to those right people, right seats. But that structure, that family charter, really allows you to have those rules of engagement written down, so that you can hold one another accountable, hold each other accountable, and be accountable to the system, not just another person. Because without the family charter or the employment policy or something that outlines those rules of engagement, without that, you're opening yourself up to all sorts of emotional or familial kind of dynamics that might damage the relationship in the long term. Now, don't get me wrong, just because you have a piece of paper that's a policy that was signed by everybody, it doesn't mean that people aren't going to get upset when they're held accountable, or they're fired, or they're not hired for a position. But it does mean that at least over the long term, you can come to terms with you had a solidified process, and a lot of that guilt, that shame is taken off the table because you are just simply living by the rules of engagement that you have. So that's really one of the foundational pieces. And there's an element of that family charter that really helps come into play here on how you can attract and really, really repel the people that aren't great for your organization and really attract those that really are great for your organization. And that is your core values. Core values is the next component of helping you to get to right people, right seats. Now, within the world of EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System created by Gino Wickman, and I've talked about that thoroughly before, it's a great system for how to get to right people, right seats, which is part of the people component. And strengthening that people component is so important. And one of the ways that you can get there, one of the ways that you can get to the right people, to find those right people and attract those right people, is with the right set of core values. If you can truly define and articulate what your core values are for your organization and your family and all of that, well, then you can use that as a measure for how to attract people to your organization. What types of people do you want to attract? You can incorporate that into the hiring process. And there's very simple ways in which you can do that. And you can even use those as an evaluation tool to see if those people are still the right people as you go on through the world. You could get feedback from anybody else where there may not be a cultures or a core values fit. Hey, if you have a core value of safety first, and somebody is consistently breaking safety protocols, maybe they're not wearing safety glasses, or maybe they're leaving, trash all around the facility or whatever. Well, there you have a clear violation of a core value that you can come back to and say, hey, this isn't the right fit for that core value there. And that is all part of how you can continue to evaluate, maybe on a quarterly basis, how your employees are doing, where they may be falling short and where they're actually succeeding. You can reward, give consequences, hire and fire based on those core values. And when it comes to family members within that, it can really get to the root of, well, maybe who might be the wrong person for the organization. They may not be the wrong person as an owner or as a family member, but they may be the wrong person for the business because they just don't necessarily fit the core values of the business. And that's okay. If you can distinguish with your family members, the idea that there are specific values that we have in the business that we have to adhere to, and those have very little to do with the dynamics of living in the family and the love that you're building there. Well, then you can start to hold them accountable to those values and start to lift them up. And it takes this is a two-way connection. And a lot of this thought has to come into play at the very beginning. So I would. One of the ways with these first two items, with the family charter and the core values, is kind of a guiding light for your hiring and firing decisions. These really set the stage to avoid the trap that a lot of family businesses fall into, which is to just bring the family member on and see if it works out. To say, hey, I've got a cousin, they need a job, and can you create something for them? Well, first of all, there's a lot of red flags in that statement. No, we can't just bring your cousin on just because he needs a job. No, we can't just create a position for him, because both of those things are really leaning into the wrong person, wrong seat argument. We are just totally going around that. So it all starts with that hiring decision. And that's where those first conversations need to happen, where we are explaining to that candidate, to the family member candidate, what the boundaries are, what the expectations are, what the, how we're going through this process, that we're adhering to an employment policy and we're adhering to a set of core values. And whether or not they make the cut has nothing to do with them as a person and them as a member of the family, as part of the fit for the family business in particular. So that's really how core values works. Set up the right type of core values for your organization, and you can use it as a tool to attract great talent and evaluate that talent on an ongoing basis to make sure that it's the right fit. And then the next thing I want to kind of touch on with regard to right people, right seats, we just kind of touched on something that is meaningful for the right people sort of thing. And another way to get to right seats, which is getting the right seats in the company, is to make sure that you have the right structure for your organization before you even think of people. Unfortunately, there's another EOS tool that helps for this, and that is the accountability chart. Now, this is not to be confused with an organizational chart. An organizational chart really focuses on who's in what positions, the people and all of that. But the accountability chart really focuses on the right types of seats that you need and the roles that those seats perform. And the reason you want to focus on structure before roles or before people is because you want to define clearly before you even think about putting people in those, what the ideal roles, where the required value is that you need to create in the organization. What is the value you want to create, and what are the seats that are going to help you to do that? And with regard to an accountability chart, that creates the right type of structure first, that foundational piece. Just like building a house, you want the right foundation before you start building it up. That structure, that accountability chart really creates that structure first, making sure that you have all of the right seats before you put the people in those seats. It's like having like Jim Collins used to call it, getting the right people on the bus. Well, getting that structure right is really getting that bus and all of the seats on the bus correct so that you know where you could put that talent. And then you can, after you go through that process of creating the right structure, well, now you have those roles predetermined. And then if certain employees or family are looking at that and they say, hey, I want, I would like a role in that organization. You can look at that chart and see where there are some empty spaces, see where there might be a good fit for that person. But if you focus on structure first, that can help you to really build in the right people into those right seats. Now, one of the traps that a lot of companies, a lot of family businesses might fall into on this one is very similar to the challenge that they fall into the right seats. They'll just put somebody somewhere, they'll just create a job for somebody because so-and-so needs a job. And they'll hope that it brings value. They'll take the hopium, so to speak, on that role creates value. But again, what you're creating there is really a challenge for your future self. Because regardless of the talents of that individual person, you haven't taken into account where their greatest and best use will be. And therefore, what's going to happen is, in many cases, is that if it's not part of the structure that you need, if that role is not part of the structure that you need, or that there's not a seat for that, well, then you're going to have a person that's filling a seat that really isn't part of the company. They're going to get frustrated, regardless of their skills, regardless of how great they can be. You're better off looking at the existing chart that you have and finding the right seat for that person, that where they can really excel and really, really achieve that. And if they can't, again, it's got to be a no. We have to be really disciplined about this if we want to keep the right people in the right seats and really perform well, make the business perform well. It's not easy by any stretch of the imagination for family, but just, in a lot of what I'm saying, I understand that it could sound like, well, you've just got to be cutthroat and you've got to just tell family members, no, all the time. But what I'm really implying by setting up the right kind of structure, by imposing the right set of core values, by setting up a family charter, you're creating an environment, a culture that gives everybody in that family the opportunity to succeed if they are willing and capable of developing themselves in that way. Because if you have a family charter that really outlines how you're going to develop employees, how you're going to develop your family members, well, then family members can go through that process of being developed, of understanding where their best value is, and then apply that within the organization. So you're really setting up a structure not to repel family members from coming into the business, but more to develop them and help them to become the right people for the business and then bring them in. And if they're just not a right fit, well, then everybody knows it, including them, and they could just cut to the chase and find for themselves what makes them happy. We have to stop trying to force square pegs into a round hole in our family businesses. We just have to. It does nobody any good. It doesn't help anybody to do that. Yes, it may feel good in the moment, like we're like we're helping them to helping some people to have a job, or helping them to succeed, but we're not helping them to develop or get or helping to bring out the best and highest value that they have. That's why we should be existing as a family business. That's what will strengthen the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle. When we can help with all of our employees, family members included, to develop their best possible value and bring that out into the world. That's where these components work to get right people, right seats. Right people, right seats is a win-win for everyone. That's really the key of it. And that'll bring me to the next, part of this section of this episode, where you want to keep revisiting the right people, right seats, because you brought the employees on board, you've brought your family on board. They were the right people, right seats when you brought them on, and now we're a few quarters down the line. How do you continue to evaluate how that relationship, how that they still are the right people in the right seats? Because our businesses evolve, people change, people go in different directions. It doesn't just stay static. So we have to stay in touch with all of our employees, including our family member employees, to make sure that they're still, in the right seats and that they're still the right people. The way that we can do that, a great way we can do that, is another EOS tool that is called the quarterly conversations. This is not an evaluation. It's not a way of having a written, documented evaluation that tells people what they should and or what they're doing great at, and getting that fodder to be able to fire them later. No, it's what this is it's just a conversation. It's a chance to get together on a quarterly basis to really be aligned, to get on the same page with what's working and what's not working in the organization, what's not working and what's working within the relationship between the manager and the employee. And so this also helps to really, when you're preparing for this, to really look at those core values, look at the accountability chart, and make sure that it's the right structure, make sure that it's the right, that they're the right person, that they are fitting the core values and they still are exhibiting those core values for you. And that just keeps everybody on the same page. It keeps everybody rowing in the same direction. If you think of our businesses like a river and you think of our people like the water, they're going to cut a path through this canyon that's going to, strengthen your business. And the more that river can stay together in one powerful, voluminous body of water going in the same direction, the more powerfully it's going to cut through that mountain, and the more powerfully it's going to build, make your business stronger. But when the water starts to kind of go in a different direction, it turns into a creek in one direction, or it goes into another direction, it starts going into a variety of directions. Well, the water becomes less powerful in each of those individual streams. It doesn't cut through the canyon as strongly as it did before. The fact that when you have success in a business, oftentimes it's because everyone in the organization is cutting in the same direction, is rowing in the same direction, is forcing, is really pushing in that one direction, cutting through the canyon and carving that path. That's what helps with quarterly conversation, is keeping everybody on the same path, making sure that everybody's clear with that vision and clearly going in the same direction, clearly aligned with the core values. That's really how to do it. One of the keys to making those conversations productive is and making sure that they are making sure that they work effectively is to make sure that they're productive and not confrontational. This should not be hey, this is what you're doing wrong and you need to fix it. I mean, unless there's a clear core values mismatch. This is a place for, as leadership, you to ask questions of that employee, ask questions of the family member to see where they're at. Get curious. Be 70% questions, 30% feedback, and then open your ears for 80% of that conversation to hear what's coming from them, and be clear that if there is any feedback that you want to provide to them, that you provide it concisely, clearly, and that you make sure it's understood. You make sure it's repeated back to you. That's how you can have success with these conversations, is make sure you're accepting the feedback and that you're being exposed to your blind spots as well as that leader. That's what makes these effective, and that's what makes for a culture where you're all rowing in the same direction. Everybody's aligned on core values, and you're getting the right people in the right seats. Finally, one thing I want to make clear here is where companies often fall short, especially within family businesses, with regard to how they employ people and how they keep that discipline correct, is really a mindset issue. And that is, we have to recognize the separation between family ownership and the business. While there is overlap in those, and that's been talked about through a model that was developed by Harvard professors called the 3 circles model of family business, where you have 3 circles: family, ownership, and business. And there's an alignment there. There's an overlap with all of those. It creates a Venn diagram where, there's some family members that are also owners and they work in the business. There's some family members that are just family members, they're not in the business. There's some business people in the business that are owners but not family members. There's all sorts of dynamics that can be at play there. But the key point about this one, in order to get the right people in the right seats, everyone in the family and the ownership has to recognize that when they are in that business circle, they are in the business. They are employees, not owners, not family. Outside of the business, they could be owners. They could own shares. They could have the same last name as the family. But when they're in the business, when they're in the seat on the accountability chart, they are not owners. They are employees. And that's an important concept. It's one thing that I picked up at a recent EOS conference, that when you're in the business, you should not be an owner. That means you are able to be fired. You're able to be held accountable, and you're held to the same kind of standards as every other employee in the company. I think Sara Stern was the one who really introduced that. I think she's either coming up on an episode really soon, or she was on a recent episode. So if she was on the episode already, go check that out. It was a really great interview with her, where she talks a lot about that. But I remember watching her at the EOS conference, and she mentioned that concept of being in the business. You're not an owner, you're an employee, and you need to be treated as such. And that agreement has to start from the beginning of that when you're being held accountable, any dynamic, any relationship that's within the business does not have to translate into how the family interacts or the owners interact. That's easier said than done. I'll be crystal clear on that. That is not an easy thing to do. Feelings are going to get hurt when we're holding people accountable, especially family members, especially close family members. People's relationships may get strained because of the dynamics of the family business. But it doesn't have to go to the extreme of ending that relationship or becoming debilitating or, God forbid, putting an end to the business. And it doesn't have to get to a point where we're developing artificial harmony within the business, where the business is running at a very, very is not performing well, because we've got a lot of the wrong people in the wrong seats, and we're just not performing, and we're pretending that everything is harmonious at that point. That doesn't work either. We want to build an open and honest organization that thrives on that honest and open communication. And the way we do that is we drive it into the root of our culture as directly and as effectively as we can. And the way that you can do that is with the key components that I just presented here. Use those family charters to help set the boundaries, the expectations, and the rules of engagement for the family. And make sure you're including a family employment policy in there to really drive home, and communicate that often with the family so that they know what to expect. Make sure that it's agreed upon and approved by all family member owners so that everybody understands what those rules are. Then lean into the core values as your way of really evaluating and making sure that you have the right people in your organization, making sure that the family members that you're bringing on match those core values. And better still, just try to, as your kids are growing up in this family business, try to instill those values into your kids, into the future generations that may come into the business. Give them that option to know that they don't necessarily have to feel aligned with them or have to come into the business altogether, but that they know that if they're going to come work for the business, that they have to adhere to those values. They have to be part of, they have to be living them in order to be working for the business. And then always prioritize that structure of your business over the people, making sure that you're creating a structure first for your organization, something that is going to lay the foundation for what you're going to build on top of it. Create those right seats on the school bus first before you start filling them with the right people. And then commit to that open, regular communication through the quarterly conversations, through those quarterly structured conversations with your employees that include family members, so that you can create that dynamic of open, honest conversation. And then as you're in the business, if you own the business, if you're a family member, if your name is on the building, when you're working in the business, treat yourself as an employee. Treat all of your employees as employees, even those that have their name on the business. And make sure that they understand that when they're working in the business, they're an employee, not an owner. And that really imprints within your culture. If you're able to live those standards with discipline, that creates the culture where your business is focused on getting the right people in the right seats. And just one more point about right people, right seats, because there may be a tendency to believe, and I've fallen into this trap as well, that when we say right people, right seats, that as a blanket statement, it means that if somebody is the wrong person in the wrong seat or the wrong person in the right seat, that they're somehow not the right person for any seat. Well, that's not true. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that everybody can have that value. Everybody can be enough and be the right person for a right seat somewhere. And it doesn't have to be in the organization. It doesn't have to be in the family business. It can be elsewhere. It could be through creating their own business. Maybe that it's in a company somewhere else that does match their core values. And again, that's easier said than done, but it's so important that we don't define ourselves by the quality of the position that we're in right now. That if it's not the right fit for us, or if it's not the right fit for them, it's not the end of the world if we part ways. That we really are doing each other a favor by parting ways if it's not the right fit, if it's a right person, right people, right seats issue, that we're doing both parties a favor by parting ways, because we're giving that person the opportunity to find the right person, to be the right person in the right seat somewhere else, and we're giving us the right opportunity to find the right person, right seat for us. Even though that's a painful prospect of parting ways, it is good in the long run. The same way it was good for me when I was terminated, when I was fired from my first job out of college, when I thought, hey, I could eventually be an escrow officer making a lot of money and doing all of this great stuff. And I had that, carpet pulled from under me at one point, and I felt terrible. I didn't feel like I was enough. I felt like I was kind of worthless at that point. But I realized over time that was the best decision that could have happened, because I found my right seat elsewhere. I found my meaning somewhere else. And I thank that company for doing me the favor of helping remove me from a seat that I didn't belong in, that I was just the wrong fit for, and helping me to free myself to find the right person, to find the right seat somewhere else, and be that right person elsewhere. Because if they hadn't, I would have been miserable for a very long time. And I wouldn't have found the joy that I found by being the right person in the right seat where I needed to be. So I challenge you to think about that too. In your life, where have you felt like you were the wrong person in the wrong seat, or the wrong person in the right seat, or maybe the right person in the wrong seat? Or are you feeling that way now? Be self-reflective on where you're at, and know that somewhere out there, there's a right seat for you. And if you're in that right seat now and you're that right person, then great. That's excellent. Now help your team to find the right people, right seats for their organization too. Because it is probably the biggest contributor to success in family businesses, aside from being in the right product in the right market, is having the right people in the right seats, making sure that you have that structure in place and making sure that you're getting the right people in that structure. That's one of the keys to success. If you can master that, you are well on your way to multi-generational success and fulfillment. And you're more on your way to love, legacy, and lifestyle that you want to live. So thank you for joining me today. If you really like this episode and you want to share it with a friend, I would love it if you did so. And in the meantime, please rate and subscribe to this show. It helps me to get the word out, and really, really helps me to grow this channel and grow this audience. Which as you could probably tell, I have a passion for helping family businesses succeed and become their best and live out their best. I've known what it's like on a personal level to have been in the family business that is struggling, and I've known firsthand what it's like to be in the family business that's thriving. And thriving is always great for family business and ownership. So thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Fearless Family Business Show. If you're enjoying this show, please thumbs up this episode and subscribe wherever that subscribe button is. And you'll get more family business education and insights in your inbox. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend, a colleague, a spouse, your mom, your dad, a second cousin, whomever you think might benefit from hearing this show. And if you're in a family business and you've got a great story to share, contact me, because I would love to see if you'd be a great fit for this show. I'd love to interview you. Or if you're struggling in your family business to find your unique identity or voice, or you need an injection of new life into your family business, I'd also love to hear from you. I'd love to learn more about you, and I'd love to see if I can help. Simply email me at adam@fearlessfamilybusiness.com, and we'll get you connected to the right place. Together, we can elevate the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle we all experience in our family businesses. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.